I never thought the moment my parents handed my brother the keys to their house would feel like a funeral, but it did. It felt like something died inside me that day, the last flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, I was ever going to be seen as part of this family. I'm 30. My name's Rachel Morris, and until that moment, I honestly believed I could earn my parents' love, that if I worked hard enough, succeeded big enough, smiled politely enough, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at my brother. But no, they smiled at him like he was the sun. And I was just the shadow standing quietly beside them, applauding with everyone else while they handed over the only thing they ever promised would be shared, the house we grew up in. Our house, or I guess now, his. It was a sunny Sunday afternoon, spring air, blue sky, birds chirping, the kind of day that looks perfect in photos. They'd gathered everyone in the backyard under white canopies, catered food, champagne flutes, clinking. I thought it was just a family barbecue, something casual. But then my mom stood up with a glass of Prosecco and tapped it with a spoon. "I just want to say how proud we are of our son Jacob," she said, smiling, like she was announcing a birth or a wedding, "and there's no one we'd rather pass our legacy to." She reached into her purse, pulled out a tiny black box, opened it slowly. Inside was a single key, gleaming silver, familiar shape. My heart dropped. My dad clapped a hand on Jacob's back and said, "You've earned this, son. This house, it's yours now." I blinked. This house? The one with the maple tree I used to climb, the one with the crooked tile in the kitchen I once tried to fix after a storm, the one they always said was ours, your future kids. I stared at my parents, waiting for them to say something, to turn toward me, include me, say anything. But nothing came. Not a glance, not a word, not even eye contact. I smiled politely like I always do, clapped along with the rest of the family, pretended it didn't burn. And when the champagne toast ended and everyone went back to laughing and hugging and taking pictures on the front steps, I quietly slipped away through the side gate, sat in my car, hands trembling. It was in that silence in that parking spot down the street that I decided I was done. Done begging to be noticed, done trying to be enough, done pretending that what they did wasn't a betrayal. I wiped my face, started the engine, and pulled out my phone. 2 days later, I closed on the house next door, and that was just the beginning. They never said it out loud, but I knew. I was always second place, not the runner-up in a fair race, more like the forgotten entry no one even noticed was competing. From the time we were kids, my brother Jacob was the golden child, the prodigy, the miracle, the one my parents told every neighbor, teacher, and distant cousin about. His soccer trophies were framed, his drawings made it to the fridge, his D+ in chemistry. The teacher must be the problem, me. I brought home straight A's and they barely looked up from their phones. I was the easy one, that's what they called me. Rachel doesn't need much. She's quiet, she figures it out on her own. Translation, we don't have to bother with her. And honestly, I did figure it out on my own. I learned early that love in my family was earned, and even earlier that I was never quite earning enough. Jacob could crash the family car and get sympathy. I came home late once from volunteering and got grounded for a week. He got a brand new laptop for college. I got a refurbished one that overheated if I had more than 2 tabs open. He failed his freshman year twice, and they still paid for him to transfer. When I graduated top of my class, I got a half-hearted, "good job, honey," over takeout pizza. And I remember this one moment burned into my brain like a scar I never asked for. I was 17, just found out I got accepted into an Ivy League school. I came home beaming letter in hand. "Mom, Dad, I got in." Jacob was sprawled on the couch playing Xbox. My mom glanced up, smiled vaguely. "Oh, wow, that's great, sweetie. Jacob, do you want sushi tonight?" That's what I got. No champagne, no celebratory dinner, no family group text blowing up with pride, just another day. And if I ever dared bring it up, I was too sensitive or reading into things. No, I wasn't. I was reading the truth. Every word they didn't say out loud, the truth that I was never the priority. You know what the most dangerous thing about growing up like that is? You start believing them. You start thinking maybe there's something wrong with you. That if your own parents don't think you're worth showing up for, maybe no one will. So I stopped waiting. I worked 2 jobs through college, took out loans, hustled every second. No safety net, No calls asking if I needed help. Just an occasional forwarded email about Jacob's latest breakthrough idea, which usually ended in debt or another career change. And yet they still saw him as the one to invest in. I was the independent one, the one they didn't have to worry about. The truth, they never bothered to worry about me. They assumed I'd survive, so they poured everything into the child who couldn't stand on his own. And I let them. For years I smiled through it, swallowed my hurt, told myself I didn't care. But I did. Oh, I cared deeply. And that's what made it so satisfying when I bought the house next door. Because finally, I wasn't just the girl in second place. I was the one rewriting the game, and they had no idea what was coming next. You know what's wild? People always say, "Wow, Rachel, you're so strong, so put together." But they never ask why. They never ask what it cost me to become this way. They don't see the nights I skipped meals so I could make rent while Jacob was blowing through thousands of dollars from Mom and Dad's emergency fund on startup scams and weekend getaways. They didn't see me crashing on a lumpy twin mattress in a shared basement while he was living rent-free in a luxury downtown apartment my parents leased under their name. They didn't see me walking 5 miles in the snow, yes, actually, because I couldn't afford to fix my brakes, while my brother got a brand new Jeep for his 21st birthday, despite flunking out of his third major. They never saw it, because I didn't show it. I made it look easy, and that was my mistake. See, Jacob failed loudly. His mess was public, his struggles were dramatic, and my parents, they rushed in like rescue workers every single time. But me, I failed quietly, if I ever even let myself fail at all. I kept my breakdowns private. My panic attacks were muted behind closed doors. I'd cry in a bathroom stall, wipe my face, and walk into a job interview like I owned the place. No one clapped for that. No one even noticed. They just said, "Rachel's doing great. She's so independent." No, I was surviving. There's a difference. I remember one week my senior year of college. I was juggling 2 part-time jobs prepping for finals and working on a startup pitch for a campus competition. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in a week. My phone rang. It was my mom. "Oh, good you picked up. Can you send $200 to Jacob?" "He lost his wallet and needs help until Friday." "No, how are you?" "No, do you need anything?" "Just, can you give more?" And like a fool I said yes. I always said yes. Because I thought that's what good daughters do. That if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, maybe one day they'd turn around and finally see me. Spoiler alert, they didn't. But here's the part that stings the most. When I got my first big promotion, real salary, real benefits, my own damn office, I called my dad thinking maybe this would be it. Maybe this would be the thing he finally respected. "Congrats," he said flatly. "So, do you think you'll be able to help your brother pay off his credit card debt now?" No pride. No, I'm proud of you. Just another request. Another favor. Another way to pour myself out to keep Jacob's head above water. I remember hanging up the phone, staring at the wall of my empty studio apartment, and thinking, if I disappeared tomorrow, would they even notice? Would they miss the support, the silence, the girl who never made waves? Or would they just look around and realize they needed someone new to carry the weight? I was their plan B. Always. Even when I was killing myself just to stay afloat, I was expected to carry their golden sun on my back. They gave him a house. I gave them my 20s, but I'm done. Buying that house next door wasn't just about real estate. It was a declaration. It was me saying I'm not invisible anymore. You don't get to ignore me and still benefit from my loyalty. You don't get to silence me and still rely on my strength. Not anymore. And you know the craziest part? They still didn't see it coming. They thought I'd always stay quiet, always stay grateful, always accept the scraps while they handed him the feast. But they were wrong, because I'm not here to play the martyr anymore. I'm here to build something they never saw coming, and the first shock was the house. The next, oh, you'll want to stick around for that. They used to tell me it would be mine one day, that house, that white 2-story home with the red shutters and wraparound porch, the one I used to sneak out of as a teenager to sit under the maple tree and dream of leaving. "We're building this for you," and Jacob Dad used to say when I was 10, holding a paintbrush too big for my hands, splashing primer on the stairwell. "This is your legacy." Funny how a legacy can be taken back the second you stop being convenient, because the truth is, they never built that house for us. They built it for him. That realization didn't come all at once. It came in pieces, the same way people break promises slowly, then all at once. Like the time I asked if I could host a birthday dinner there after college, and Mom said, "Oh, honey, you know your brother gets overwhelmed when there are too many people around." Like when I offered to help fix the broken fence, and Dad said, "Leave it for Jacob, he needs to learn." He needed to learn. He needed space. He needed investment. I needed what to disappear. No correction. I needed to understand. That was the word they always used. "Rachel, you're older. You need to understand. Rachel, you've always been the responsible one. You need to understand." But I didn't understand. Not when they gutted the kitchen to make room for Jacob's chef phase and didn't even tell me. Not when they added a home office for his web design startup, which folded in 3 months and didn't once ask what I needed to grow my business. And definitely not when they stood in that backyard surrounded by cousins and neighbors and champagne flutes and gave him the house like it was some well-earned prize. No shared legacy. No, you both deserve this. Just Jacob glowing with pride and me silent, smiling, burning. But here's what they didn't know. 2 months earlier, I'd been secretly working with a realtor. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not yet. I was just trying to get away. Something small. Something mine. And then, fate handed me the wildest opportunity. The house next door, the one with the sagging porch, overgrown lawn, and foreclosure notice on the door, had just gone back on the market. It needed work. It needed vision. It needed someone who knew what it was like to be overlooked and underestimated. Sound familiar? I made the call, ran the numbers. And the day after my brother got handed a house like a participation trophy, I put in an offer on the property right next door in cash. My cash. The one thing they said Jacob had that I didn't: potential. Well, I saw my potential in that rotting wood and cracked driveway. They handed Jacob a legacy. I was about to build one from the ground up. The renovations took 6 months. I poured every weekend, every lunch break, every ounce of free time into that place. I learned how to rip out drywall, how to install a toilet, how to use a nail gun carefully for the record. And while Jacob posted selfies from his new home office and talked about becoming a real estate influencer, I was knee-deep in sawdust tile and determination. My friends thought I was crazy. Even my contractor said, "You sure this isn't about proving something?" Damn right it was. Every hammer swing said, "You didn't see me, but I was here." Every floorboard I laid whispered, "I made this, no one gave it to me." Every coat of paint screamed, "This is my house, my story." And then came the final reveal. Not to the world, to them. It started with a casual text in the family group chat. The first I'd sent in weeks. "Hey, just moved into my new place. Would love to have everyone over. You're already familiar with the neighborhood." I could practically feel my mom's confusion through the screen. I didn't mention the address. I didn't have to. They'd find out soon enough. Because the moment they pulled into that driveway next door and saw me standing on the porch, keys in hand, in front of a gleaming, freshly painted front door, their expressions absolutely priceless. The invitation came wrapped in nostalgia and nerve. A crisp white envelope with gold trim, hand-delivered by my mother, like she was the queen of suburbia. She didn't even make eye contact when she handed it over. Just said, "We're hosting a little get-together next Saturday. Thought it might be nice for the family to reconnect." Family. Now we're using that word again. I took the envelope, said nothing, and closed the door slowly. Inside. You're invited to a celebration of Jacob's new home, a family BBQ, Jacob's new home. Right. The one he didn't pay for. The one built on the foundation of their favoritism. I set the card down, stared out the window at my house, the one I'd rebuilt from scraps and sweat and stubbornness, and thought, this isn't a BBQ. This is a coronation. But then something in me shifted, something bold, a little twisted even. I was going to go, not to start a fight, not to make a scene, but to show up, to take up space, to walk into the narrative they tried to write without me, and rewrite the ending myself. So I planned my entrance. The day of the BBQ, the cul-de-sac was lined with minivans and pastel-colored SUVs. Family, friends, old neighbors, relatives who hadn't texted me in years, all of them gathered around the golden boy, toasting him like he'd cured cancer instead of inherited a house he didn't earn. I parked my car in my own driveway, took a deep breath, adjusted the neckline of my fitted black jumpsuit, professional, clean, powerful, and grabbed the pie I baked the night before. Blueberry bourbon, slightly over the top, completely intentional. And then, with every ounce of grace I could summon, I walked next door. Their yard was decorated like a Pinterest board. Twinkly lights, rustic wooden signs, mason jars filled with lemonade and disappointment. I could hear the laughter before I even reached the lawn. "Rachel," someone called, surprised. "You made it." Aunt Deb hugged me like I'd just returned from war. "We didn't think you'd come." I smiled. Why wouldn't I? Jacob spotted me next. His smile twitched just enough to reveal discomfort. "Hey, sis," he said, shifting his red Solo cup from one hand to the other. "Glad you could come." I nodded. "Wouldn't miss it. Beautiful house." "Yeah, thanks," he said, glancing toward Mom for approval. "I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, all this attention." "Oh, I'm sure," I said lightly. "It's a lot to handle." "When you didn't see it coming." He blinked, confused. And then boom, it happened. One of the neighborhood kids pointed across the lawn toward my house and shouted, "Hey, that new one's even cooler. Who lives there?" Silence fell like thunder. All eyes turned. I held up my keys and smiled. "That'd be me. You could have heard a blink drop." I walked across the lawn, heels tapping deliberately, and unlocked my front door. Then, without a word, I turned and called out, "If anyone wants a tour, you're welcome to come take a look." And they came, one by one, two by two, aunts, cousins, even a few of Jacob's friends. They wandered in gasping at the reclaimed wood floors, the sleek kitchen backsplashed the upstairs office with floor-to-ceiling windows I'd installed myself. Mom walked in last. She stood in the doorway like someone had just told her the house was haunted. "This is yours?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I bought it, fixed it, furnished it." Dad stepped in behind her, eyes scanning the room. "When did you do all this while you were busy turning the other way?" I didn't say it with malice, just fact. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the quiet one, the afterthought, the support beam holding up someone else's success. I was the architect now, and their silence. That was the sound of a narrative collapsing. There's a certain kind of silence that happens when people realize they've underestimated you. It's not the silence of confusion. It's the silence of reckoning. And that's exactly what filled the air as my parents stood inside the foyer of the house they had ignored until now, the one I rebuilt from the foundation up with my bare hands, while they handed Jacob the keys to mine and called it legacy. Mom ran a hand along the edge of the staircase banister. "This looks expensive," she murmured. I smiled, slow and measured. It was. But I didn't need a handout to afford it. That line, it hung in the air like perfume with a little poison in it. Beautiful. Sharp. The rest of the family wandered the rooms, marveling like tourists in a gallery. My cousin Tara whispered, "You really did all of this?" "All of it," I said. "No help, no inheritance, just hard work and long nights." Jacob was the only one not moving. He stood planted in my living room like a glitching statue. I watched his gaze move over my mid-century velvet couch, the built-in bookshelves I stained myself, the curated art prints, the clean lines. It didn't look like a starter home. It looked like power. It looked like purpose. "This place is—" He trailed off, eyes narrow. "It's nicer than mine." I tilted my head. "It should be. I earned it." His jaw flexed. And then my father, always the fixer, stepped in with his signature fake chuckle. "Well, sweetheart, this is certainly impressive. You really went all out, huh? Maybe a little over the top for one person." There it was, the diminishing, the need to shrink me back down to a version they could understand. So I leaned in. Maybe. Or maybe it's exactly the size success is supposed to be when no one believed in it but me. His smile faltered. My mom shifted uncomfortably. "You know, Rachel, if you ever need help decorating or, I don't know, advice, we've done a lot of home projects over the years." "Oh," I said almost too brightly, "I'm good." You see, when I needed support the most, you were busy choosing favorites. I figured out how to manage without you, and it turns out I'm really good at it." More silence. Not the awkward kind, the heavy kind. The kind that wraps around you like fog and forces you to feel everything you've ignored for years. I gestured toward the kitchen. "There's lemonade on the counter, bourbon in the cabinet. Anyone who wants to stay, stay. Anyone who wants to go knows where the door is." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't make a dramatic speech or throw anyone out. I didn't have to, because the walls spoke for me. The countertops, the polished floors, the lighting that cast everything in warm gold. This wasn't just a house. It was a monument to every sacrifice they never saw. And now, they were standing inside it. The neighbors, some of whom had been sipping cheap wine in Jacob's backyard an hour ago, were now buzzing around my kitchen, complimenting the tile work and asking about design inspo. A few whispered things like, "I didn't even know Rachel lived here," or "She's done so well for herself, hasn't she?" And the kicker, Lily, our cousin who had always worshipped Jacob like a god, pulled me aside. "Can I ask you something?" she whispered. "How did you do this? Like, really? Did you win the lottery or something?" "No," I said. "I just stopped waiting for people to save me." She blinked, speechless. By the end of the night, my house had become the main event, the buzz, the Instagram story backdrop. Even the catered barbecue plates ended up being eaten at my dining room table. Jacob walked back home without a word. My parents followed about 10 minutes later. Mom turned to look at me from the porch one last time. Her eyes were wide, not angry, just small. For once, I didn't feel like I owed her anything. Not a thank you, not a smile, not permission to be proud of me. I simply closed the door, and for the first time in my life, I felt full. Not from food, from finally being enough. No applause, no praise, no speeches, just me, standing in the house I built on the street they thought they owned. And the only sound left was the door clicking shut behind them. I didn't expect them to come back the next day, but they did. 10:07 a.m. Sharp a knock at my door. I stared at it for a moment, coffee in hand, wearing my robe and zero patience. Then I opened it slowly, just enough to see their faces. Mom, Dad, no Jacob this time. They looked different, not broken, but chipped. "Can we come in?" my mom asked softly, like she was treading through a minefield of her own making. I didn't answer right away. I stepped aside. They walked in slowly, eyes flitting around like it was their first time really seeing this place, this life, this version of me. We sat. They didn't touch their coffee. Neither did I. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "We didn't know." That was it. 3 words. Lame, weak, inadequate. I tilted my head. "Didn't know what?" He blinked. "That you had done all this. You didn't ask," I said, voice flat. "Not once." My mom looked like she wanted to disappear into the couch. "We thought you were doing fine," she said. "You've always been strong." "No," I corrected. "I've always been alone." Silence. Real silence. No TV humming in the background. No phone notifications breaking the moment. Just 3 people sitting in a perfectly decorated living room with decades of damage hanging like fog. My dad finally spoke again. Jacob needed more help. He's always struggled with focus, with responsibility. And I didn't. I said, laughing once cold. "You think I was born knowing how to refinance loans, replace my own brakes, pitch investors, renovate drywall? You think being capable means I didn't need support?" Mom's eyes welled up. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Rachel." "No," I said. "You meant to prioritize him. You just didn't think the damage would stick." There it was, the truth. I hadn't come this far to sugarcoat it. You can only be the strong one for so long before it hardens into something else. A wall, a warning, a vow. My dad put his elbows on his knees and dropped his head into his hands. "We messed up," he mumbled. And for the first time in my entire life, I believed him. It wasn't a full apology, not yet. But it was more than I'd ever been given. Still, I didn't let it pass without weight. "You didn't just mess up," I said calmly. "You created a family where love had a price tag, where loyalty was transactional. And you made me pay for my independence like it was a crime. Mom cried then. I didn't comfort her. I just let her sit in it. That was hers to feel. I bought this house, I said, finally not to prove anything to you, but to remind myself that I'm not what you made me feel like all those years. You're right, my dad said, and we see that now. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But honestly, I didn't need them to anymore, because clarity isn't about them. It's about me. It's about drawing lines where there were none. It's about putting value where they never did. It's about deciding that I get to define my worth, not the people who missed it. Before they left, my mom asked, "Can we come to your next housewarming event? Maybe bring something?" I smiled politely. "Sure, but bring wine, and maybe humility." She let out a breathy laugh. It was half joy, half guilt. They left quietly, and I sat there alone again, but not in the way I used to be. Now I was alone with power, with truth, with clarity, and once you have that, you don't go back. Because once you stop begging for love you always deserved, you realize you were never the problem. You were just too valuable to be seen by small eyes. They thought legacy was something you give, like a trophy passed down in a velvet box. But I've learned something they never did. Legacy isn't about what you inherit, it's about what you build. And I was building something bigger than a house with fresh paint and a mortgage in my name. I was building a name of my own. The whispers started after that barbecue. Word got around. Neighbors who barely remembered I existed suddenly wanted to know what I did for work. Friends of my parents, the same ones who used to gush about Jacob's latest venture, began showing up at my door with casual just checking in coffees. It was like the world suddenly noticed me. But I wasn't fooled. They didn't really see me. They saw the house, the success, the story. They didn't see the 3 a.m. breakdowns, the overdraft alerts, the hours I spent eating rice and frozen vegetables while Jacob was ordering sushi on Dad's credit card. They didn't see the woman who had to learn to fix a busted water heater from YouTube because no one was coming to help. But I remembered. And that's what fueled me. Because this wasn't the finish line. This was just the foundation. The house next door became more than a home. It became a headquarters. I turned one of the spare rooms into a consulting office. People started reaching out for business coaching, digital strategy, personal branding things. I used to give away for free because I didn't think I was legit enough to charge. Now clients paid me thousands to do what I once begged people to notice. I launched a digital course, started hosting small workshops. My platform grew. So did my bank account. But the best part, my impact grew. I began mentoring young women from tough family situations. The kind of girls who were told they were strong just because no one offered them softness. Girls who were labeled difficult because they dared to ask, "Why not me?" One night after a small networking dinner I hosted in my dining room, one of the girls, Nia, 22, first-gen college student, pulled me aside and said, "You make me feel like it's okay to take up space." I cried. Right there, in the hallway. Because that was it. That was the legacy I wanted to leave. Not furniture, not square footage, but permission. Permission to be bold, to be loud, to build something even when the people closest to you think you're not enough. Especially then. And while I was busy building, Jacob was busy, unraveling. The pressure of homeownership hit him hard. Maintenance, insurance, property taxes, he had no idea what he'd signed up for. He called Dad for help, again and again. But something had shifted. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was embarrassment, maybe it was the realization that the child they'd invested in had no return. Meanwhile, the daughter they overlooked, she was building equity in her business, in her relationships, in herself. One afternoon, I caught Jacob staring at my house from across the lawn. He was holding a rake he clearly didn't know how to use. Our eyes met. He looked tired. I nodded politely and walked inside. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was busy. Busy becoming the woman they never saw coming. Busy proving not to them but to me that I never needed to be chosen to be powerful. And the truth, they gave Jacob their house. But I built a legacy, and no one can take that from me. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Not the kind of storm that blows through with drama and thunderclaps, but the quiet kind, the slow, steady drizzle that seeps into everything. I was working late in my home office, reviewing partnership contracts for a brand deal I'd once thought was impossible when I heard the knock, 3 short taps. I didn't expect anyone. Opening the door, I found my father standing there soaked from the rain, holding a manila envelope in one hand and an expression I couldn't quite read. "Got a minute?" he asked. It was the first time he'd been to my house alone. I stepped aside. He walked in carefully, as if stepping into a place built with secrets he wasn't sure he had the right to know. We sat in silence for a while, the only sound the ticking of the old clock I'd rescued from a thrift store during my renovation days. Then he slid the envelope across the table. "I found this when I was clearing out some of your mother's files," he said. "Thought you should have it." Inside were old report cards, letters of recommendation, newspaper clippings from high school competitions, things I thought they'd never even kept. Proof of my early brilliance shoved in a drawer and forgotten, while they hung Jacob's participation ribbons on the fridge, like gold medals. "Why are you giving this to me now?" I asked, voice steady but sharp. He swallowed hard. "Because I realize now, we got it wrong." I didn't speak. Not yet. He took a deep breath. "We thought Jacob needed more. He was always fragile, always chasing something he couldn't quite hold. You were sturdy. Like stone. We figured you'd be fine on your own." "You figured wrong," I said quietly. He nodded, slowly. "You were carrying more than we ever knew, and you never asked for anything. We thought that meant you didn't need anything. But really, it meant we weren't paying attention." Still, I said nothing. I'd learned that some apologies needed space to land. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, a posture I remembered from my childhood, usually when he was explaining why Jacob's actions weren't his fault. But this time he looked older, smaller. "We didn't just give Jacob the house," he said. "We gave him our belief, our investment, our trust. And we left you to earn everything from scratch. That wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. And I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long time, and finally, I asked, "Do you regret it?" He nodded once, eyes glassy. "Every day. It should have felt satisfying. It should have felt like justice. But it didn't. Because the truth is, apologies don't rewind time. They don't put meals on the table I skipped or return the sleep I lost, wondering why love always felt conditional. They don't undo the nights I cried alone or the years I spent chasing their approval like a dog chasing a car, never knowing what I'd even do with it if I caught it. I appreciate the words I said, careful and calm. But they don't change what happened. I know," he whispered. I looked down at the envelope in my lap, proof that I'd always been enough. They just hadn't been able or willing to see it. "Do you know what the worst part was?" I said, finally meeting his eyes. "It wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It was knowing that if I had failed, you wouldn't have shown up for me." He winced, and didn't deny it. That silence told me everything. "I'm proud of you," he said eventually, "and I know I don't deserve to say it, but I am." This time those words didn't sting. They just landed, lightly, like the rain tapping on the windows, because I didn't need them anymore. I'd already found my worth elsewhere, from the students I mentored, from the clients I helped build confidence, from the woman I saw in the mirror each morning, the one who had become everything no one thought she could be. He stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "If there's ever anything we can do to help—" I smiled softly, not unkindly. "There is," I said. "You can stop pretending Jacob was the only one worth betting on." That landed. He nodded this time with something that almost resembled peace, and then he stepped into the rain, leaving muddy footprints on the doormat of the daughter he had once overlooked. As the door closed behind him, I looked down at the envelope in my hands. It didn't feel like validation. It felt like closure. And sometimes that's the most powerful gift of all. There's something sacred about waking up in a space that you built. Not just walls and furniture, but a life, a rhythm, a voice, and mine. It was finally loud enough for the world to hear. The morning after my dad's apology, I brewed my coffee slowly. No rush, no tension, just sunlight through my kitchen window, the sound of birds outside, And that familiar quiet that didn't feel like loneliness anymore, it felt like ownership. I walked through each room with bare feet and a full heart, running my hands across door frames, countertop edges, paint I had personally chosen and applied. It all told a story, my story, the one no one bothered to ask about for far too long. And now it was impossible to ignore. In the weeks that followed, the calls kept coming. Old classmates, distant relatives, even a few of Jacob's friends who'd once written me off as the quiet sister. Can I pick your brain on a project I saw your feature in Forbes's Rising Women in Business? My niece is thinking about launching a business. Would you be open to mentoring her? It was strange, but not surprising. People love a comeback. They just rarely stick around for the climb. But I wasn't bitter. I was busy. My second online course launched to rave reviews. The podcast I hosted centered on resilience and rebuilding after family neglect hit the top 10 in its category. I got invited to speak at panels. I even started writing a book. And Jacob. He sold the house. It was too much for him. Too many responsibilities. Too many expectations. He moved to a condo 2 cities over and started figuring things out. Again. I wish him peace. I really do. But I also wish someone had told him what I had to learn the hard way. Legacy can't be handed down like a set of keys. If you don't build it yourself, it will always feel too heavy to carry. My parents still reached out occasionally, cautiously, gently, the way you approach something precious that you once took for granted. They invited me to holidays. Sometimes I went, sometimes I didn't, because I decided the terms now. Not guilt, not tradition, me. One day my mom came over alone. She brought a lemon cake, the one I used to beg for on birthdays but rarely got. She set it down on the counter and said, "I should have made this for you years ago." I looked at her. She looked tired. Not old, just softer. "I used to think strength meant not needing anyone," I said. She nodded. "And I used to think love meant giving the most to the one who needed the most help." "Jacob didn't need help," I said. "He needed boundaries." I needed belief. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm learning that now. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and that was enough." As she left, I stood on the porch and watched her walk past the garden I planted by hand. Tulips, rosemary, white daisies, the kind of things that bloom with care. That evening, I hosted a dinner in my backyard under string lights beside my rosemary bushes. The table was full Zoe, the friends who'd seen me before the winds, some of the young women I mentored, a few new neighbors. We laughed, we toasted, we celebrated the life I'd created, not received, built. Later, as I watched the last of the guests disappear down the street, I sat on the porch alone. Cool breeze, glass of wine, a quiet that didn't ache anymore. And then I said it aloud to no one in particular, and maybe to the little girl still curled up somewhere inside me, waiting to be chosen. I was always worthy. Not because of a title, not because of a house, not even because of success, but because I chose myself when no one else would. That's the final word. Not revenge, not validation, but freedom. Freedom to live without begging, freedom to thrive without apology, freedom to know deep in my bones that this is my life, my voice, my home, and from now on, my rules.